Hey guys, I'll start with how to break down these references and learn them so you can use these references to your advantage and get more detail in your models. So here are my reference sheet which I made for my armor, which I'll be sculpting soon for my character. And so let's get started. So I painted these primary forms on the reference which I have. So in blue you can see all the primary form which I have painted. So you can see in the reference like this primary forms, they are only affected by the silhouette of any object. So mostly the primary forms, they affect the silhouette of any sort of object. Like they're almost like the outline of any object. So you can also see, if even if the image is blurred, you can see all these forms. Then there are secondary forms which are in orange. They mostly are the patterns which bend the light. So secondary forms are mostly affected by the light. Like you can see all these lines which are moving, and they also complement the primary forms. So like you can see the way these lines are flowing, and they're complementing the flow of the primary form. uh, like you can see here the way these forms affect the light. Like if you see the secondary forms, these are the places where light bends, and you can see like shadows and highlights. And then there are tertiary forms. So tertiary forms are like fine details. And uh, from what you can see, it's like the tertiary forms almost they break the flow. So they're almost in the opposite direction of your secondary forms. So if you see in this image, it's like there are almost all the fine details are flowing on in this direction, and all your secondary forms are flowing in the horizontal direction, while the tertiary ones are flowing in the vertical direction. So they are much more finer details, and they don't really affect the surface light that much, but they do break down the light, and that's what makes things look more realistic. So in CG, it's really important to have like finer detail, which breaks down the highlights on the objects. Like in this, you can see how the specular is almost broken down into small dots. And here too you can see how all the small details are affecting the surface of any object. Here you can see that the tertiary details are present, but they're not affecting light that much, but they still have different colors and put more information on the model. Here are some more crab references I collected, because the armor almost looks like it's made up of crabs and crab shell and like oyster like surface. And wherever you see, you'll find the same pattern. So you'll see like uh, so here's the primary form, which is the outline. Then you'll see that there are secondary forms like this is affecting the light, and then there's a form here, and this is affecting the light, and all these bends and all these parts which affect the light. And then you see that there are tertiary forms which are like these small detail which almost break the specular. So it's really important to keep in mind that you start from your primary forms, which is the outline, and then you go to your secondary forms, which is the flow of the which gives you the flow of the object, on also bends the light. And then when you're almost happy with both your primary and secondary, you start adding tertiary details. I also collected some more references from nature, and it's almost same in every single thing you see in nature. So here in this leaf, you can see that there's this primary form which is the outline of the leaf, and then uh, if you go, you'll see like these bigger forms here, which are like secondary forms, which are almost breaking the light. Like you can see, there is a bit of highlight and there's shadow here. Like there's highlights and then shadows here, and then there is like a tertiary detail, which are these like finer details on top of the secondary ones. Even in these mountains, it's like the bigger forms, and then you can see how the secondary forms, they're bending the light, so you can see all the shadows and highlights. And then with the tertiary forms, you can see like small breakdowns, and it's the same out here. It's like big forms, outline, then then there is like secondary detail which is bending the light, like bigger forms inside the primary forms. And then there is all these tertiary detail, like small pattern which is flowing across, which adds finer detail to your model. So yeah, every single thing which you see has a pattern to it: primary, secondary, and tertiary form. So yeah, you can use all the references which you have to your advantage to get like a flow or a pattern in your models, and it'll look more realistic.